Hello and welcome to the 2021 statewide star party here at Fort Macon State Park. I am Ranger Paul, Park Ranger at Fort Macon and also member of the Crystal Coast Stargazers. Today I'm going to be helping you learn how we use a tool called a star chart. Star chart is simply a map of the night sky. It helps us figure out what different stars and constellations are. And it's a real cool tool that you can use, especially if you're new to astronomy, to help you figure out what you're looking at. So by the time we're done together today, I'm hoping that you feel a lot more comfortable using one of these in the night sky. And I hope that you get some clear nights in the next few days where you can actually take this out and give it a try for yourself. But first, let's zoom in on this little piece of paper and I'll try to give you a quick explanation of what we're looking at and how we use it, and then we'll go outside and I'll give you a more practical example of what it looks like in practice to go out and use one of these charts. Okay, now that we have our star chart, let's take a closer look and see how we might use this thing. This is the star chart you would get if you got one of our take-home kits or if you went to the Star Party website and downloaded it from the materials and project list. You can see it's for April 2021. The sky changes throughout the year, so these charts, this is probably a pretty good one for April, but if you try to use it, say, in October or November, it's not going to be correct anymore because the constellations will be in either not there or in different locations because the sky goes through changes all year long. We've got some instructions on the side here to try to help explain how to use it if you're not familiar with it, but hopefully when I get done talking you'll have a better idea. First things first, for any people that enjoy looking at maps or reading maps, let's look at this star chart and see if you notice anything that seems out of place or out of the ordinary. That's correct. West and east seem to be on the wrong side of the chart. If you're like me, when I was in school learning how to read maps, the way we were taught to remember where north, south, east, and west went was a little saying that said, never eat shredded wheat. That basically meant you started north up top, never in north, eat, east, not west, east, shredded, S, south, wheat. So west and east seem to be on the wrong side of this chart. That seems odd. We'll talk about that later when we go outside and try to use it, but just wanted to point that out right now while we've got a close-up view. Now, a few things you'll notice. We've got the view of our night sky. You've got a bunch of dots that represent stars, and groups of stars can be made into what we call constellations or shapes in the sky. And some of the more prominent constellations have been drawn out in their stick figure form. You can find different artist renderings of what the constellations are supposed to look like. Some are more elaborate than others, but these are kind of the common stick figures of the more prominent constellations that we like to look for. Something I'd like to point out that maybe you've noticed, some of the dots that represent the stars are a lot larger than other dots that represent the stars. That's interesting. They must have a good reason for doing that. You know what it is? That's right. The brighter the star, the bigger the dot. So when you're trying to get yourself oriented and figure out what you're looking at in the night sky using this star chart, the brighter the dot, or the bigger the dot, the brighter the star is. So if you look down here, this is the biggest dot on our whole chart. This is the star Sirius. That is the brightest star in the night sky. It's in a winter constellation called Canis Major, which means the big dog, and it is what I would call one of Orion's hunting dog. So you've got Orion up here right next door. Orion is the great hunter, and a lot of time hunters like to take dogs with them. So Orion's no different. He's got his dog with him. Orion's got some very bright stars. You've got Rigel down here in the bottom, and up in his shoulder you have the red giant Betelgeuse, which is a cool star to find and look at. Orion's also generally an easy constellation to find because most folks are very familiar with Orion's belt, which is these three stars right here that form a fairly straight line. And you'll notice our star chart even drew a dotted line between the three stars of his belt down to Sirius, which is an aid for astronomers to use when they're trying to find their way around the night sky. They do something that we like to call star hopping or star pointing, where you use known stars in one constellation to point you or give you directions to another constellation. So in this case, if you can find the constellation Orion, look for his belt, draw a straight line through his belt down to the brightest star you can find, and you'll know that you are now at Sirius. Another good constellation I would suggest for you to look for if you take this chart out and try it yourself, the Big Dipper. So this one's got it labeled Ursa Major with the Big Dipper smaller. Ursa Major is its official name, which literally translated means the Big Bear. So the Big Dipper is actually a constellation of a bear. But once again, we've got a couple dotted lines going off of the Big Dipper. First off, if you go to the end of the cup on the Dipper and draw almost a straight line in between these two stars, it will take you up to Polaris, which is the North Star. Polaris is also in the very end of the handle of the Little Dipper. If you have trouble finding the Little Dipper, don't be hard on yourself. It has a lot of very dim stars. You'll notice how small the dots are here, here, here. So unless you're in an extremely dark location, generally all you can see of the Little Dipper is Polaris, the North Star, and the two stars here at the end of its cup. Polaris is interesting because it's the only star that never moves in the night sky. If you could set up a time-lapse camera, or if you just set your camera up and left the shutter open for an hour or so, you would notice all the other stars appear to rotate around the North Star, with the North Star staying in place. You can actually look up online star trail pictures. There's some beautiful photographs that nighttime photographers can do, where they just point their camera at the North Star and they get this cool bullseye effect with these light streaks going through the night sky from the star's apparent movement as the Earth rotates under Polaris. Now, going back to the Big Dipper once again, we've got some other constellations and stars we can find. If you look at the handle of the Big Dipper, you'll notice that it makes an arc shape. So if you take that arc shape and kind of continue it along as the dotted line shows on our chart, it goes down to this very bright star here. You see how big that dot is? That's going to be a very bright star, and that star is called Arcturus. This is also handy because what shape did we make to follow the path to Arcturus? An arc. And they've even written this in on our star chart. That's a very common way for people to remember the name of this star. They say they go from the Big Dipper and they arc to Arcturus. So that's a great star to look for. It's in the constellation Boötes. Yes, I took a long time to learn how to pronounce that right, and I still doubt myself, but I am about 90% sure this is called Boötes. You can continue this arc from Arcturus on down to another very bright star called Spica. And Spica is a beautiful bright star in the constellation Virgo. Virgo is the Virgin constellation, so that's one of the constellations in what we call the zodiac. I'm not going to get into that, but the zodiac constellations kind of follow this path across the middle of our star chart, which is also the path that the moon and all of our planets follow as well. So Leo the lion, Gemini the twins, and Taurus the bull, all four of these would be constellations in the zodiac. And since I mentioned the moon and Mars, that is our theme for this year's Star Party, they will both be visible for us during the month of April. So if you go out on April 16th, the official day of the Star Party for 2021, you'll see we've got the moon listed right here for April 16th, and kind of right to the side of it will be the planet Mars. If the weather's bad on Friday the 16th, but it's good on the 17th, you can go out and Mars will be first and then the moon. So the moon is going to move a little bit each night. So keep going out later and later in April. You can imagine the moon might be here and here and here. It's going to work its way across this chart, and the phases are also going to change. If you want to learn more about the phases of the moon, look for Miss Lisa's video coming up very shortly, where she'll help you learn the phases of the moon using Oreo cookies. This also means if you go out earlier, I think we're going to put this video out on Sunday, the moon might not even be out when the sky first gets dark. So that we'll be in what's called a new moon phase, or close to a new moon phase. So this is the basics for how to use a star chart, or what you're looking at on here. I think we will next go outside and I'll give you an overview of what it actually looks like in practice to use one of these charts. Okay, so we've got our star chart. We feel like we kind of understand how it works, and we're ready to go outside and use it. So we've come outside. I've got an area with a good clear view of the night sky. There's not much trees or anything on my horizon right here. If you can find a great spot like this, more power to you. Where I grew up, all I could see was a little circle because there were a lot of big trees around my home. But we've got a nice open area. We've got our star chart, so let's see what we can figure out. We're going to take our star chart, hold it over our head, and then I don't guess this is really going to work in the daylight because the stars aren't out yet. I've got an idea though. Let's try this. Yeah, the clapper works every time. So now that it's dark and the stars are out, we can take our star chart, hold it over our head. What's that? Oh, now you can't see me because it's dark and there's no light out here. I guess I didn't think about that too hard. It's kind of like me not thinking about the fact that most of my younger viewers don't have a clue what the clapper is. So let's bring the sun back out in a way you're more familiar with. Alexa, turn the sun back on.
Okay, turning on the sun.
Okay, so here we are. We're going to have to pretend, because if I do this in the dark, the video's going to be terrible. If I do it in the light, the stars aren't up. But in reality, you probably wouldn't be able to see the stars with my camera equipment anyway. So we have our star chart. And one of the first things I like to do, if I can, and if you can't do this, don't worry too much when I start talking about it. I will give you some options later. But if you can figure out which direction north is, I like to figure out which direction north is first. Now, since this is where I work, I already know that north is kind of this direction right here. And if you remember from when we were looking at this star chart close on the table, it actually says north, south, east, and west on it. And we talked about how east and west was backwards. We're going to get back to that here just a minute. But I know north is this way. So if I were reading a map, I would stand, probably, I might not if I'm doing something else, but in general, I would figure out which way north is, stand facing north, and hold my map so that north is in front of me. That would do what we used to call orienting the map. So if I do the same thing with the star chart, because basically the star chart, all it is a map of the night sky, a map of the stars. If I face north, hold my star chart so it faces north, now I'm oriented, right? Well, not quite, because where do we look to see the stars? Do we look on the ground? No, we look up in the sky. So we actually need to take our star map, and hold it above our heads so that we're looking at the map and the sky at the same time. And do you notice what happened when I did that? When I'm holding the map down here, north is pointing this way, but when I flip it over my head, now which way is north pointing? It's pointing behind me, that's right. So that is also why east and west is backwards, and I'll try to show you what I mean. If you don't understand, it's not terribly important, but it always fascinated me because it was real confusing. I used to love to read maps, and then when I got to star charts, I was like, why is east and west wrong? So now we're going to do a little bit the opposite of what I told you to do for a map. We know north is this way, so we're going to put our back to north and face the south. But we're still going to hold our star chart to where when it's over the ground that north is in front of us. This way, when we take the star chart and move it over our heads into the sky, now north, south, east, and west have all gone into their proper positions. North, south, east, and west. So that's why east and west seem to be backwards on a star chart. It's because they are made to go over your head to look in the night sky. Now, if you don't know which direction north is, you might have a compass. This is my old Boy Scout compass I've had since I was 13 years old. I can bring it out. The red end of the needle points to the north. You could bring your location up on Google Maps or some other online map server, and normally they orient the map with north up and figure out which way north is. Or you can just take your star chart, hold it over your head, and especially if you go out on like the 16th or the 17th, the moon will be around, and you can just spin around with the chart over your head until the stars on the chart line up with the position that you actually see in the sky. And then you can use your star chart to tell which direction north, south, east, and west is. So, we've got our chart. I already know which way north is. I put my back to it, hold it on the ground, making sure north is in front of me at the top, lift it up over my head, and what do I do now? Well, personally, I like to look for the easy things to spot. So for this particular star chart in mid-April, we've got Mars and the moon are going to be close together. They ought to be over here somewhere. So if I look in this direction according to this chart and see the crescent moon and Mars, which will be a bright red looking star, then I'm pretty sure that I've got my chart in the right order. And after that, as we talked about inside, the bigger the black dot, the brighter the star. I can generally look for the brightest stars and the biggest dots on my chart and figure out what I'm looking at, and then sort of connect the dots to confirm that I am looking at the constellation or the star or whatever particular object in the night sky I want to find using my star map called the star chart. I hope that made sense. We are planning to put this video out early in the week because weather is always an issue. Not only do you have to wait for it to get dark outside to look at the stars, you have to wait for it to get dark on a night that is not cloudy or rainy. So I hope by us putting this video out first, you'll have plenty of days in the coming week where you'll have at least one good clear night that you can go outside and see the stars. Now that we have a better idea of how to use an old-fashioned paper star map, let me briefly talk about what a lot of you would probably prefer to do or might already do on your own. In this day and age, we have a new technology called the smartphone. Still blows my mind what you can do with a cell phone in your pocket that I couldn't do even when I was a kid, and I don't think I'm that terribly old yet. But there are all kinds of astronomy apps and stargazing apps that you can find for your cell phone. Some require a small payment, a lot are free. So if you're young, get with your parent or guardian and you can look through your app stores and find one that looks good to you. But what most of these stargazing programs will do, or night sky programs will do, you bring the app up on your phone It will link up with your GPS, so it will know your exact location on Earth. It knows what time of year it is, what time of day it is, and you can just hold your phone up to the night sky and pan around. And as you move your phone around the night sky, the screen will follow the sky with you, showing you the different constellations, planets, everything that's out there. You can zoom in on it to get a closer look. Awesome new technology that's extremely beneficial to learning the night sky. So I still like to learn the old ways, but I embrace the new ways also. So I highly encourage you, take some practice with your paper star chart, but have a lot of fun with the technology that you can get on the different apps for your smartphone. I might put a few links in the description below of some of the ones I like. Stellarium is a very popular one. I know Google Sky Map. I haven't used that in a while, but that was probably the first one I used. But there's a ton out there. Just do your research and pick one that works best for you. And you can have a lot of fun with a tablet or a smartphone with one of these stargazing apps. Having said that, we thank you for joining us on our virtual star party here at Fort Macon. We plan to have several more videos coming out with different people, so you don't have to look at me every time. We'll be talking about different things, including phases of the moon, how to build a cardboard Mars rover. We've got a storybook again this year, so different activities for people of all age groups coming one day or each day this coming week. We hope you'll join us, and we hope you've enjoyed it today. Thanks for watching, and clear skies.